Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Life in Sport podcast. And I'm joined by a man who needs absolutely no introduction, but I'm going to give it my best shot. He played 421 first grade games. He won 8 grand finals, 2 challenge cups, 3 world club challenges. He made 14 appearances for England and 1 for Great Britain. He's an absolute Leeds Rhinos legend. If you love the Leeds Rhinos, you'd be remiss if you didn't know who this gentleman is. His name is Jamie Jones-Buchanan. First of all, thank you very much for joining me. And how's your day been so far, Jamie?
Absolute pleasure. I'm in one of my favourite places in the world, AMT Edinburgh Stadium, a place
Yep.
that I refer to as a diverse, inclusive, fertile flowerbed of opportunity. And I think I'm a living, breathing example of how this stadium facility changes lives.
Absolutely. And you know what? What better way to start off with than the question, what is your earliest memory of rugby league?
Oh, wow. Well, as you might know, Edinburgh is actually a cricket ground and a rugby
Mm-hmm.
league ground. And my earliest memory, actually, rugby league, was when my mum and my grandma were working as waitresses in the cricket pavilion, and they'd bring me,
Okay.
and I'd run around amongst the cricketers, and a gentleman offered to take me over to the rugby ground because there was a game on.
Yep.
Cass were playing Leeds,
Oh,
so
good rivalry.
we went across, and I remember standing right down in the east on there and just being blown away. My first experience. This would have been maybe at late 80s,
Yep.
watching Cass play against Leeds. And I quickly realised, as much as I love sport and I knew I was going to live my life on the vehicle of sport from quite a young age, I thought I don't really want to play a game where they have cucumber sandwiches at halftime. I want to go play this gladiatorial game out here. And
Yep.
that's when I fell in love with rugby league. Started playing it outside my own house with some of my friends when I moved into a place in Bramley in West Leeds with a big patch of grass outside our house. But yeah, my earliest memories, mate, I've been coming to Edinburgh Stadium since I was about 5, and I've loved rugby league since I was maybe 7, and then started coming regular at about 9.
Absolutely. And touching on the, experiences, and obviously probably wouldn't have been too far off from your first going over to that game to then, playing your junior rugby league. Now, if I'm wrong in my research, definitely let me know. But Stanningley ARLFC, if I'm not mistaken, were your junior club before the Leeds Academy. What was it like playing at, Stanningley and whatnot?
It was wonderful. It's where my friends were. I grew up in West Leeds. So you've got Bramley, Stanley, Pudsey, and players like Jamie Peacock, Mark Calderwood, Ashton Golding, Ash Gibson. There's a lot of lads come through Stanley. It's a wonderful community club. And it's just the place of belonging, from being maybe 9, 10 years old, where I found my own little tribes, my own little community, my team. And it's a big part of my origin story, where I'm from. And ultimately, we all go out as young children to go play a game that we love, find and galvanise relationships, don't we? We forge those relationships. And even now, I've got 4 sons. They've all played at Stanley. 2 of them are still there. 2 of them are in academy here at Leeds.
Oh,
And
wow.
when
So
I
we
go to
may see
Stanley,
if some future Jones Buchanans in, Leeds Rhinos first string.
yeah, well. Listen, I don't want to put them under any pressure as long as they're
No.
growing as human beings and enjoying that journey and representing the blue and amber jersey. Perhaps they've got an opportunity. That's all we all need. But yeah, Stanley
Absolutely.
was fantastic, and I'm still friends with a lot of people there now.
That's incredible. And obviously you then, get picked up at a young age, which a lot of people who may not know, who only listen to my NRL episodes, but the UK Rugby League has academies very similar to football, as in anyone who's in Australia, soccer. So I hate saying that, but soccer and rugby league, they have academies where, they scout the talent from quite a young age, some as young as 9, could be 11, etc. And those academy days sort of, help build you and mold you into the person, right? Similar to Harold Matthews Cup to anyone that's listening in New South Wales, or Cyril Connell Cup, etc. So you get signed to the Leeds Academy. What was it like walking into, the resources and the facilities at a young age in the Leeds Academy in the amber and yellow? So amber and blue, my bad.
Well, mate, I've never left. So I signed for Leeds as a 15-year-old fanboy. That was my dream, right? So I'm doing okay back into my junior playing career there, playing representative rugby locally, and I just wanted to sign for Leeds. And actually, Leeds were one of the last clubs to come and have a look at me. But
Wow.
I held
Who
on.
was
I
in the
got,
front running for you for your signature?
oh, funnily enough, the first club ever to ring me when I was youngest was Wigan, and Wigan like were massive at the time, and
Mm.
so that was like, how good's this? Like, it was like a huge honour. But in time, there's other clubs, Huddersfield. I think they did a little bit of Wakefield, but I just wanted to play for Leeds, my
Yeah.
hometown club, and got that opportunity. And bit the rand off. And mate, I remember getting my first tracksuit. I don't think I took it off for 2 or 3 weeks. You know, it didn't even have the Rhinos brand on it then. It was the old Leeds RL logo.
Yep.
And I remember having one pair of socks, one pair of shorts, one t-shirt, and one hoodie. And it had number 66. That's what my squad number was. I was so far down the pecking order at the time. But it was wonderful, mate. And I'm blessed to have been able to continue on that journey for 27 years.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously, growing up as a Leeds tragic, everyone has a favorite player growing up and watching that. Who is your rugby league idol growing up?
Yeah, that's great. So I guess people like Ellery Hanley, Gary Schofield had stand out when I was a youngster. And then Adrian Morley when I got a little bit
Oh,
older.
I've had the absolute
Moz,
honor of interviewing him, and absolute top bloke he is.
he's a legend, mate. And he was a young boy. I mean, he's only, what, maybe 6, 7 years older than me now, but he was a young fellow with number 11 shirt. And yeah, I just admired his physical ability when him and sort of Graham Murray were really prominent. Graham was obviously as a coach. Graham Murray
Mm-hmm.
brought Mosu in the late 90s there. And thinking about that, 97, 98, 99, before he went to Roosters, like just magic. And then, listen, I always admired that number 11 shirt as a back rower, and I was blessed in 2007, I think, to get that number 11 shirt, and I had it for 11 years. So to be
Yeah.
able to wear Moz's shirt in my career was mint.
Yeah, mate, I'm getting goosebumps just hearing that. That's incredible. And walking into the training pitch the week after your Super League debut, which was funnily enough against Wakefield, what was that like? You would have been on cloud nine.
Yeah, I was. And it was a real blessing. I remember it being really tough and going out there and just thinking I'm going to enjoy myself. You know, a lot of the fans in the crowd were people that I grew up with, my family, friends in there. I always tell a funny story
Mm-hmm.
that my full name's obviously Jones-Buchanan, but back then the numbers were that big and the letters were that big, they could only fit Jones on there. So I only had half my name. So I'm thinking half my family's not going to be too happy about this. And as silly as this might sound, the kit man, he put Jones on home shirt and Buchanan on away shirt. So it was like two different people making my debut again. But yeah, it was interesting. I just wanted to go out there and do my club proud and just not let anybody down. I think that's the biggest fear. And just start that journey in development. And the late great Graham Murray gave me that opportunity in 1999, and it was the start of a real wonderful journey.
Oh, absolutely. And we're going to touch on that journey right now. Super League debut, 1999 versus Wakefield. Again, a club that showed a lot of interest in you, as you just alluded to earlier. What was that like, running onto the pitch, obviously with the number and the name and all that and in front of the family, but what do you remember specifically on field about that game?
I remember it being tough, physical,
Yeah.
fast. Felt like I was surviving. And this is
Yep.
what happens, right? It's like, I think they call it a punctuated equilibrium, and there's a moment in time when things go like that. But
Yep.
at the time, it's uncomfortable. But it was the start, and it was this evidence, what I call now the prior wall of evidence. And we've all got those building blocks, by the way. I can go right
Yep.
back to being 3, 4 year old running around with an egg and spoon at school. And winning an egg and spoon race or finishing third is all evidence that we're making progression in life. So this was just one big stepping stone. But massive honour to have played for Leeds just for once. It was my boyhood dream. I got to do that and kick that off. And yeah, 420 games after that, I finished.
Oh, absolutely. And there was a lot of success during those 421 games. And the first of that coming in only about 5 years-ish after your debut in 99 in 2004, when you and the Rhinos won the 2004 Super League Grand Final against bitter rivals of the early 2000s for the Rhinos, Bradford. What was that like going up against Bradford Bulls in a grand final and obviously getting the win over them, who unfortunately they got the win over you the following year?
Yeah, so there's a fair bit in that. I think every grand final winning every year's got a story in there.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually got my 2004 grand final winning ring. That's
wonderful.
Which is cool. So my first one, and what's interesting is I grew up supporting Leeds, but Leeds has never won the championship in my lifetime. I think it was sort of 30 years prior to us winning it. So to be on the field when my team wins it, playing, contributing, and again,
in the team, yeah.
In the team, it was just amazing. And to make that even better, 10 of that 17-man squad grew up through the academy system. So we were all homegrown boys. Yep. Many of whom had stood, like me, in the South Stand, singing, marching on together. So extra special time. And it was part of the dynasty. Yeah, and of course, I think I did a podcast with him recently, Tony Smith, who was the coach at the time, the brother of Brian Smith. And, you know, I was nearly in tears. I nearly welled up at some of the memories and reflecting on how special that was, because you've got to remember that's the seed blossoming of a generation that went on to become the most successful,
to dominate, for lack of a better term. Yeah.
In the club's history.
Oh, absolutely. Because you don't win 8 grand finals with relatively the same pack of players across the career without, you know, something special being there. And it's very similar vibe to the current Penrith Panthers crop, for lack of it. And I'm sure you can definitely sense that as well. Because even though you're losing some players like the Panthers, you know, they still continue to win because they're getting that homegrown talent. And obviously 2005 World Club Challenge comes along, and you're going up against the Bulldogs. Again, you get the win. What were your thoughts on that? Not only have you won the Super League Championship, you've now won the World Club Challenge against what would have been at the time considered the NRL as the pinnacle, and you've toppled the pinnacle of rugby league at that point.
Yeah, well, the football team, Leeds United, is all about this for me, Leeds. I grew up in Leeds. Leeds gave me so much, and the people within it. It's quite an hard-working, unassuming city. So to play at Ellen Road,
at the football ground,
which, do you know what I mean?
Like, going to play in a church is what you're doing. You're playing at church.
Exactly. How good's this? So not only have you just won a grand final and being a part of a championship winning team for the first time in your living memory, you're going catapulted into a World Club Challenge against Canterbury Bulldogs at Ellen Road. You go get the win, and this is the bit where I nearly welled up, because you can call yourself a world champion. And listen, I know that's got some connotation around it, but actually, it was such a special moment. And when you look at their team as well, Big Sonny Bill Williams just knocking skin off everyone. And it was
Mark O'Mealy doing the exact same.
Yeah.
Matt Utai running rings on the wing.
Yeah, and it was the first time we'd played against an NRL team. We were like, wow, this is going to be tough. And I think it was about 24-6 to us at half time. We were going, actually, it's not too bad. And then second half, they come out and they were like a freight train. And to be fair, if it had gone on another 5 minutes, I dread to think where it might have gone. But we held on, we got the win, and we called ourselves world champions. And again,
because you deservedly and rightfully so were. Yeah. Which is incredible. And then obviously you went just a few years later, not even a few, just 3 years later, 4 years later even, you had gone a three-peat against St. Helens. James Graham's St. Helens, you could say, and also James Roby as St. Helens. First of all, what was that like? Again, you've gone the 2004 grand final, first in your living memory, to then only a few short years later win a three-peat of grand finals with Leeds Rhinos.
Yeah, it was a special time, and I reflect on some of the players that sort of started coming around that time, like Brent Webb, Gareth Ellis. We really reached our peak, you know, Jamie Peacock, Rob, Kev. Everybody was starting to reach their zenith, their prime. And interestingly, St. Helens were outstanding in the sort of weekly rounds. And to be fair, they'd usually pagger us, but we had this ability in the playoffs to just lift up like meerkats.
Grit is what it is. It's grit.
Yeah, another 20%. And we just could smell Old Trafford. Like when over here in October, the sort of dew starts to come on the grass, and it starts to smell a little bit different, a bit sweeter. And it was like this reaffirming confirmation that, hang on a minute, we're in September now. This is our time. And we're going to go out and bring everything that we do well, crystallise it into a ball. And you're almost, you know what, we've been through that much adversity, losing in Challenge Cups as well, by the way.
I'll be bringing those up, absolutely, because you did end up getting to taste the sweet victory of a Challenge Cup. But please continue.
Yeah, two sides of the same coin. It makes you hungrier when you lose. And, you know, sometimes you stand in that tunnel looking at a great St. Helens side with the likes of even Sean Long, Kieran Cunningham, Paul Sculthorpe. But then you go, actually, you know what? We've been through a fair bit here, and we're a galvanised unit, and there's some talent in this Leeds team. And I don't think you're willing to go to the depths of adversity that we're willing to go to get this job done. And
Yeah, like
listen,
you
as
want
you
it,
said,
but we want it more.
mate, amen. And eight opportunities, 7 wins. The one loss against Bradford in 05 when Adrian Molly come back and played last 2 games or something for Bradford. But
in my opinion,
yeah,
that's a bit of a turncoat given he, leads, but we'll let that slide.
yeah. But no, it was good. It was good, mate. And then all of a sudden you go, it's not just an accident. This you describe it as a three-peat, the treble, the 3 in a row. It's a dynasty. It's the start of a dynasty.
Oh, absolutely, because you then go on to have relative success across the rest of your career as well. And we'll touch on the Challenge Cups now, obviously, because anyone that's not that is listening that doesn't know what the Challenge Cup is, it's the rugby league equivalent in England to the FA Cup, basically. And I've interviewed quite a few Super League players. Some say, winning a grand final is their peak, but a lot of them say winning a Challenge Cup is even more, because it's literally knockout. You could just be off your game for 5 minutes and boom, you're out of the Challenge Cup. Now you managed to get, unfortunately, a few losses, as you said, makes you hungrier, but you did manage to get that win. What was that like?
Well,
So no, you go.
I'd almost resign myself to thinking that maybe this is a missing piece of the jigsaw that never comes. We won our first grand final in 2004. It took to 2014 to get our first Challenge Cup win. So even though we'd lost in 2003 narrowly, we lost in 2005 to Hull narrowly. We went to Wembley in 2010, 11, 12 and lost 3 in a row.
And what sucks is it was to Warrington a few of those as well.
Wigan, Warrington, twice I think we lost to Warrington. So, mate, devastating. But again, I go back to the beginning. The Rudyard Kipling poem I always like to talk about: triumph and disaster. Treat those 2 imposters just the same. And we persevered. We played in the Challenge Cup final against Cass in 2014. Played a really boring game plan, and we got to win. We got to win. And what's interesting is there's maybe perhaps 9 games left at season after Challenge Cup. And we lost every single game after that. We absolutely bombed out of that year. And it was that point I always talk to people about this truth, really, that whether you win or lose on a Friday night isn't as important as how you get out of bed on a Saturday morning, because the 2 sides of the same coin. It's momentary feedback as to where you're at. So you can learn from both experiences. Obviously, losing, especially in the final, is horrendous to overcome. But if you channel that in the right way, you can use that as energy to get the next win.
Oh, absolutely. And just a stone's throw away, in 2015, the Leeds Rhinos complete the treble, which is, to anyone that's listening, the league leaders, which is in the NRL, it's equivalent of the minor premiership. It's the grand final win, and it's the Challenge Cup win. You guys would have felt absolutely invincible. Tell me about that season as a whole and the capitulation of the grand final and the Challenge Cup wins as well.
Well, I think it's significant because it was almost like the swan song. You couldn't have written it for Hollywood, in that Kevin Sinfield, who I always describe as the greatest leader and cultural architect I've ever seen, met, or read about, decided that was just going to be his last season, as was it going to be Jamie Peacock's, as was it going to be Kylie Luai.
Yep, and massive. Him as well.
The 3 boys there, and to go get the treble, and the fashion that we finished top of the league when Ryan Hall scored that last-minute Aguero try in the corner at John Smith Stadium at Huddersfield. Like, it was, because back then the RFL had made it a little bit theatrical. If we win, we get the trophy. If Wigan win and we lose, they get the trophy. And they had a helicopter sort of hovering between the 2 stadiums, and it was going towards Wigan. Ryan Hall comes up with a big try at the last second, and it's like all places erupts. In fact, a quick fact or truth that you might not know about: all the wedges in their back, and the time that they were tracked, every player tracked as moving their fastest in their game was when they was running to celebrate Ryan Hall scoring his try. Right, so that just goes to show what it meant to the players at the time. So they're not working hard enough
for the whole game, and then they run their fastest to celebrate. Wow!
Oh, that's it. And then the helicopter comes back. But why it was so special for me was I actually didn't play in any of those games at the back end, because I tore my quad off my knee against St Helens at Warrington in the semi-final at Challenge Cup. You may remember Travis Burns. He
I
comes out
do.
down short side and he put on a great sort of marker tackle, got right on the ball, and the force sent me into a spin where it just ruptured my quad. So I missed the final, but Kevin famously said to me, "Look, Jones, if we win the final at Wembley, I want you to come and lift the trophy with me." And I did, and the photograph
Yeah.
that I've got of me lifting the trophy with Kev, I think it underpins and symbolises why that generation of players was so special, because it was this altruistic, selfless concern for the well-being of others over the course of a decade and a half that I think made everybody realise their potential, but best version of themselves, find real purpose in what they were delivering to the team on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, find this real solidified sense of belonging and living a life fulfilled, physical, mental well-being. And that for me is a treasure. People ask me all the time now, do I miss playing? I say, no, I loved the players more than the game. I like
Yeah.
rugby league, of course I do. But the memories and the relationships forged through moments like that will never leave you.
Oh, absolutely. Because as everyone says, football isn't forever when it comes to playing it. But yeah, the camaraderie is an absolute running theme amongst almost every single one of my guests that are retired athletes. They say the camaraderie is the one thing they miss. They don't miss the preseasons. They don't miss getting smashed up every week, but they definitely miss staying fit and playing footy with their mates. And my next question actually goes off the quad injury, because an injury can be very, very daunting. Some people never come back from injuries, of course, and it can lead to a dark spiral, for lack of a better term, mentally. So, what was the hardest part of being a professional rugby league player for you personally?
Well, I think you're probably leaning into that. So obviously, injuries, poor form, other factors that you might not be able to control that influence the way we play or the way we perform our well-being. But I always talk about the tribe, and by that I mean the team, the generation that I came through, and there was always this element of support and benevolence. So there's always a kindness in there, and you always knew that even if you took positive risks in the sense that you was stepping out on a limb for the betterment of the team, that if you fell off that limb, there'd be somebody there to catch you or to pick you up or to bring you back. And that gave us an awful lot of courage, resilience, and trust. And I think there for me, the ingredients, when you're on your goal line and you're defending in 79th minute of a game and you've got to hold them out, 2 point difference, it's that gives you the energy to turn up for your teammate. So whilst I obviously had some material adversity in my career, yeah, it wasn't that bad because I had the right people around me. And, I mentioned Kev a lot. He was a great leader. He's still a great friend. Exchanged text with him today, starting his challenges soon in December. But yeah, he would always foster an environment where we had a deep sense of care for each other. And that it made most adverse situations at least bearable.
Yeah, that's incredible to hear. And thank you for opening up about that side of sport as well. And getting back into the seasons, only 2 short years after 2015, you're lifting the trophy again in 2017. Again, what was the season like and what was the finals like for you?
I think it was bizarre that because in context,
I
we
wasn't
won the
expecting
treble.
it as a Rhinos fan myself, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, well, and that's because you look at the narrative we tell ourselves. We won it in 15, the treble, as you say. So you're like, wow, how good's this? Kev, JP, Kylie leave. Then 2016, we were in the bottom 4. I think we ended up in the middle eights. So you're almost fighting relegation, and you're going, what's going on here? Or it must be because Kev and JP's gone, and the only person that came in to make the difference between 16 and 17 was Matt Parcell. And Adam, yeah, and we still had Adam Cuthbertson and Mitch Garbutt, who regained some real form. And we just 2017, we just turned it round. And I think in many ways, when you reflect on where we'd been, and if you was to ask Brian McDermott now, who's I think assistant at Newcastle, as our coach at the time, he'd probably reference 2017 as special as the treble.
Absolutely.
Because of the context of where we sort of bounced back from. And of course, that was the last grand final we won as a club. It was the one where Danny Maguire and Rob Burrow again symbolically shared the lifting of the trophy, which I think is another angle through somebody else's lived experience of the love and camaraderie and friendship that we had as a group of guys. So 17 were really special, and it left me with a finishing memory of what was an amazing sort of generation of players.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of Rob Burrow, first of all, what an absolute legend he was. I almost meant to say he was, because he's still alive in our memories regardless. So to honor his memory, I'd be very remiss if I didn't ask some questions. So I've only got 2 questions. They are more or less the same one. What are your 3 greatest memories of him on the field and off the field?
So Rob Burrow on the field, I think there's the grand final try in 2011 that he scored, which will be iconic for forevermore. And the reason why, I'll tell you the story. I've shared it a few times, but
Yeah,
when you watch that, he takes on the line, and I'm stood right on the edge, and I'm in back row, and I'm like wanting the ball. I remember as soon as he took off, I'm like, Rob, what are you doing? I wanted the ball off him. And he ducks under Tony Puletua, and then he goes around Paul Wellens. And I remember asking him about that try, and he said, look, I saw Tony Puletua turning a bit slow, he looked tired, and I thought, I'm going to take him on. And one or two things will happen. I'll have a duck under him and skin him, or he'll knock me into next week.
Yep.
And this time, he ducked under him and scored the try, and it was unbelievable. Arguably the best in the history of the grand final. But Rob often got knocked into next week. There was one at Ellen Road where Anthony Watmore clattered him and knocked him out, and he'd come off. But the thing about Rob was, he'd always get up again. And he'd turn up because he had the courage, mate. He was just the personification of courage. And you're talking about a kid who never grew an inch after his 10th, 11th birthday.
Yeah, he was
tiny. And everybody's going, how's he going to play rugby league? But he did. And he did it
yeah.
so well. World class, strong, pound for pound, strongest. So that's probably my favourite memory sort of on it. Off the pitch, Rob was always a joker. So he'd always be burying your boots in the floor, or he'd be there's a story of him cutting Kylie Luluai's pieces of paper, all puncturing them, and then filling him his air vents in his car so that they just blew out all the time for months. Kylie would try and throttle him like Bart Simpson. And Rob was a very staunch Yorkshireman as well, so he had an interesting sense of humour. And again, look, when I think into Rob, and it's not a favourite memory, but what's an inspiring memory is that despite the fact he had his voice and his physical ability robbed from him, he didn't show any less courage in that he lived out MND publicly to shine a light and raise money and awareness for a community that needed it. And I make no bones of repeating myself, because it's really important that Rob's life and legacy. Yeah, Rob's life and legacy is continued, and we carry on talking about him and the great things that he did.
Absolutely. He did incredible things on the field. And towards the end of his life, once the MND diagnosis was, announced, did even greater things off the field than that make the on the field accomplishments like unmatched in comparison, if that makes sense. And very similar in Australia, Carl Webb was diagnosed with MND literally about 2 months before Rob Burrow himself. And so to have, I'm a Brisbane Broncos tragic, I was born in Brisbane, and a Leeds Rhinos tragic as my family heritage, to have 2 players, one from each of my beloved clubs, have that happen. It was heartbreaking. But I'm so glad that Carl also in Australia set up the Carl Webb Foundation, as Rob Burrow set up a foundation as well. It's incredible. And Kevin Sinfield and yourself and everyone else involved is a testament to him, his memory, and everything that encompasses that. So my next question for you, it's about your playing days, is who was your individual or your team toughest opponent for you personally? What team did you hate going up against, or what player in particular did you hate marking up against?
The first person, there's a couple that spring to mind. One would be Leslie Vinacolo for sure, when he was at Bradford.
Yep.
He was one of the first really that I remember where he's the winger coming off his own in goal and starting that ball. His kick returns
running off the back fence,
massive. Yeah, mate, he was just like a cannonball. and you're really going down there tired, trying to get yourself a bit of a group together to mitigate whatever bump or carnage he was going to cause. So he was always a massive handful. And then players like Paul Sculthorpe and Andy Farrell, who were just great ball players, but big men as well. Could push you off, throw a pass. So probably those two when I was younger. As I got older, I learned to deal with it a little better. I once played against Ruben Wiki. It was like trying to tackle a lamppost. He just couldn't move him. Remember, just like stood there and he just wasn't moving no matter what I did.
Wow.
So yeah, I've been fortunate to play against some absolute monsters and survive. But I think I'll probably go Les Vanacola from the nightmares he caused me when I was younger.
Fair enough. I definitely don't blame you. And before we get stuck into some fast five questions and wrapping it up with a few extra questions after that, which coach had the biggest impact on the player you were and the man you are today?
Oh wow. It'd have to be Tony Smith. If you use the word impact, when you put context into it, when and where, Tony Smith was the turning catalyst. Brian McDermott was special at a mature time in my career, and he taught you how to be a man. Do you know, and as daft as that might sound, and in a gladiatorial game, you need that. But Tony Smith come into my life at a time when I was still on the periphery and needed to solidify and cement a career. And he just gave me all the tools and the motivation to be able to do that. And a lot of those tools are still with me now, so the way that I process things and the habits that I try to form. It was magnificent. I did, again, a podcast with him recently, and it was just unbelievable to have him on. But he's a big developer of people, and he's certainly somebody who developed me.
Oh, that's incredible. And anyone that's interested in listening to Jamie's podcast episode with Tony, I'll get the link and I'll put it in the description of this episode so you can go and check that out. Now, we've got fast five questions, which is 5 quick fire questions just to get to know you at a bit of a deeper level, but some fun ones. So my first question is Apple or Android?
Oh, Apple, mate, all day long. Do you know what? I've had an Apple. I had an Apple Mac computer, a Power Mac G3, and that would be about 98. So long before iPhone come out, I've been a Mac user. Sure.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. For me, I'm Apple phone, but Windows computer. So bit of both worlds, but definitely not a fan of Android phones. Second one, favorite movie of all time.
Oh, mate.
There's no judgment either, by the way. It could be a guilty pleasure movie.
Probably because of the nature of it. Maybe the first one that comes to mind would be Snatch. Either Snatch,
good film
with Brad Pitt. I love Guy Ritchie. Guy Ritchie's a great storyteller, and it really feeds into the way that I see the world. So Guy Ritchie stuff's class. I love watching the Terminator franchises as well.
Great films.
And now that we're coming up to Christmas, not far off, my missus will be hammering films like Scrooged. Stuff from 1980s as well. Are really easy, not too complicated on the mind. Got a bit of sense of humour, bit punchy, nice and quick. 90 minutes, love it.
Oh, awesome. My 2 favorite movies are Saving Private Ryan. I've watched that countless times. And Mean Machine. Anyone that doesn't know about that movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's anyone that obviously you know what it is, but a lot of people who don't know, it's basically British football version of The Longest Yard, starring Leeds United former player Vinnie Jones as the main character in that. It's a great film. A lot of people don't really. It's even got Danny Dyer in it, it's and Jason Statham as well. A lot of people don't realize it's a great film. It's definitely one of my favorites. It's not even a guilty pleasure. I freaking love it. Next question: how do you like your steak?
Oh, medium well. Should that might disappoint some people.
That's all right, as long as it's not really well done.
Yeah. I'm coming back towards the damper end of it, but medium well, nice. Yeah, I like a nice steak with a bit of peppercorn sauce.
Nice. What's your drink, or if you don't drink, your beverage of choice?
My favourite tea in the world, if I was stuck on a desert island, would be a cup of Yorkshire tea, dash of milk, and a spoonful of honey. Love honey.
Oh, honey. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. So that'd be my favourite beverage.
That's very nice. And what is your biggest pet peeve?
Barriers, physical barriers. So anything, right? There's so many things in life that you'll be walking and it just gets in your way. That could be a traffic light in one place, a door, heavy doors, keys. So a really silly fact. A couple of examples at my house, right? I've only got one key, and one key opens every single door,
Oh, isn't
like
that great?
including my shed, my outhouse, front, back, opens everything. Because otherwise, you're walking around like a janitor. And why do you need a different key for every door? It's madness.
It
And
literally just makes more barriers if you have all those keys. Yeah.
yeah, I've got a hot water, instant hot water tap, so I could get rid of the kettle. And I took like the toilet seats, took the toilet seat off as well, because the people might go on about, but actually they don't really have a purpose. There's a lid that might say have a purpose. The actual ring seat forms absolutely no purpose in my mind, and it's just there to get it where and to make a mess. So yeah, anything where you can streamline and make more efficient, mate, that's me.
No, that's fair. Because you don't have time to faff about. I totally get that.
No
And
time.
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 5 final questions for you. First one is 2022. You're awarded an MBE, which, in my opinion, so very deserved. What was it like for you receiving that MBE, and obviously going up in general to receive such an honor?
It was a massive honour to be able to take my wife, my mum, and my grandma to Buckingham Palace and receive that from Princess Anne. To wait in the green room, I think that might be where the phrase "green room" come from. You wait in the green room before you go see the throne room. And it's really interesting because it was in a really difficult period of my life. I'd retired. I had to repurpose that sense of belonging because I'm no longer a player. So I've got to forge a new career, a new destination. And I wasn't lost, but I didn't have much conviction about what I was doing. And there was a little bit going on. The team weren't performing particularly well on the field. And I got this letter through which said it had the royal insignia on it. And I thought, wow, I'm going to court here. I've done something wrong.
Yeah.
And then I opened it and it said, will you accept an MBE? And I've always been quite a royalist. I love the old Plantagenet Merovingian dynasties, kings, medieval days, knights, and Game of Thrones type stuff.
Yep.
And I thought, wow, how good is this? So it was a massive honour. But I will say, when you receive an award that you weren't aiming for, it's an honour, but there's a limited amount of satisfaction in that as well. It's not particularly fulfilling for a long period of time. And the reason being is it's almost like to quote Bob Ross, it's like an happy little circumstance.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful.
Like you didn't set out to achieve it. It's just a offset of your achievements, for lack of a better term.
Yes. Yeah. Which is lovely, isn't it? And it's nice to be recognised. And for that moment in time, it gave me a pump. And now and again, it's nice. Do you know what it does do? It's a reminder of where you've been. And it keeps me in line as somebody who if you're going to have MBA under your name or any other insignia, you've got to behave like somebody who's deserving of that, by the way.
Yeah.
So it keeps you, I guess, in a way where you behave according to what you hope is your identity.
Oh, absolutely. And in 2022, again, as you just mentioned, you were sort of trying to find yourself outside of a player. And you became caretaker coach of Leeds Rhinos. Obviously we know how that came about. Coach was sacked, but at the same time, did you feel like you were ready to take on the caretaker role, and how did you handle it on and off the field?
Did I think I was ready? No, but I think anything where you're outside your comfort zone, you're not really ready for. But that's half the purpose as well. I think the only time we grow is when we're out of our comfort zone. It's like the old Richard Branson saying, if somebody offers you an opportunity, and you're not quite sure what to do or how to do it, just say yeah and learn. And I felt like I could learn. I'll be honest with you, it was simultaneously the most exhilarating and terrifying 6 weeks of my life. I loved every minute of it, but it was like jumping out of an aeroplane as well. Technically, was I ready? No, I didn't know enough about the game in terms of being a Super League coach. I'd been a coach since I was 18, but I coached all kinds of levels, and I'd spent maybe 2.5, 3 years as an assistant. So I understood that in the game. I understand the players and the mechanics around it. And ultimately, we had some good people. And I think you surround yourself with the right people and open up the doors for the right people to lead in the right situations. It's great. I think what's important in those roles is just that leadership, getting around the boys, helping them to conceptualize their own gifts, talents, and then creating an environment where they can thrive and they feel that sense of belonging. And I knew, and I said this from the off, look, we've got maybe 6-7 weeks here until the club finds a new head coach. And all I want to do really is try and create a blank canvas so that when this new head coach comes in, everybody's in good spirits, they're communicating with each other, they feel like they're all valued. And those base elements of human belonging are all in place. And then that new coach can come and install some of the game plans and the philosophies and however he wants to impress his identity upon that team. Rowan Smith come in and, it's funny, I lost the first two, drew the middle one, won the last two. Rowan Smith come in and then we sort of nudged our way all the way to a grand final. And, it was a great learning year. I learned so much. I think the biggest thing that I learned was that you can't copy and paste the culture from one generation to another.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's bespoke. You've got to see the world as it is, not as you are, to quote Stephen Covey. And I was really encouraged. I think Rowan was helpful with this as well, in that I started to appreciate the way that other people saw things more than myself. So it was a very informative year of my life.
That's incredible. That's an awesome insight into that. Thank you again for sharing that side of things as well. Touching on coaches and whatnot and caretaking and all that sort of stuff. Obviously, Leeds Rhinos got a new coach this past season in Brad Arthur, and he's just re-signed. What are your thoughts on how Brad's going so far? And obviously, he's signed a extension, and let's hope that there's more to come. But what are your thoughts so far on how Brad's going at Leeds Rhinos?
I like Brad. We like him a lot. I think he's in the essence of a Leeds character. He's really simple, and simple things aren't necessarily easy, by the way. But the simplest things can be incredibly tough. He's really clear and he's got conviction. And I think that's, certainly when you're young men, you just want some sort of consistency and conviction. What is my role? What do I need to do? How are you going to measure that? What are the metrics in which I'm going to be judged? And let me go and do it. And when you've got that, it just needs to be simple and clear. And the boys, sometimes, some of them are like robots, and you've got to program them to do what they want to do. And that's all they want, by the way. Others are a little bit more cognitive, think a little bit more, they want to have a bit more of an opinion. Brilliant. Let's harvest that as well. And then let's make a make-up here. But we've got to have some pretty simple rules with conviction about who we are, what our identity is. And for me, I think he uses that. Is what you might call old school. So that really leans into me, militant, and firm, just firm. Bam, this is what it looks like. Go do your job, son. And then we'll see what happens. So I'm really optimistic about 2025. I think he made a difference in the last sort of 10 or so games. That he was
I definitely noticed a difference.
Yeah. And certainly, obviously, defensively. So, it's good. It's positive.
Oh, absolutely. 3 final questions for you. First of all, looking back on your sporting career, what is your proudest accomplishment?
Surviving.
Fair.
Do you know, I always start, and it's important this, because I always start with, whenever I do any talks, this highlights reel. And I always joke that it's amazing how good you can make yourself look on a highlights reel, right? And it's sort of 22 years worth of tries and tackles. And I say to people, that's every good clip I can find in 22 years. And the point is, I wasn't the most gifted or talented individual, but I worked hard. And Danny Badaris, I think, had a book called Talent's Not Enough, or something to that effect. Oh. And he was one of the most talented human beings I've ever seen, like being able to put a ball wherever you want it, wherever you are on pitch, boom, thanks, Betsy. But it was a hard-working, honest guy as well. And whenever you're speaking to anybody, regardless of how talented you think you are or you aren't, it's just that work ethic. Always encourage people to work hard. And I think, being able to survive, being industrious, being hardworking, and having a great application to life takes you a long way. So I'm proud of that, of being resilient and persevering and having the courage to keep going. To me, sometimes turning up at the start line is what's important.
Oh, absolutely. And every single guest that I've ever had on this podcast has literally said, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work. And that's absolutely tenfold for yourself. And my two final questions. Recently, there was a rugby league versus rugby union legends match, and you were featured in that. How was that for you?
Yeah, it was really special again. So I've talked a lot about collaboration, connection, and how that was fostered in my generation of players. So you've got rugby league, rugby union, and if I was to take you down now into the tunnel, there's lots of history and heritage on the walls, and stories about how rugby in 1895 was divided, and that was because of the social classes. The people in the north couldn't afford to have a weekend off and play, so they started paying them. You get rugby league, rugby union, and that goes off. And we know rugby league works because NRL's awesome, right?
Yep.
And then you come to 2024, and these two games that have been so far apart, and over here it's maybe a little bit more exaggerated because of the class. There is a class divide over there, still is.
There's definitely a class divide here in Australia as well. Yep.
Right.
Private school kids play rugby union. Public school kids play rugby league.
Right. Yep. So that's insightful. And you get the two coming together for the right reasons. So Doddy Weir, Rob Burrow, Ed Slater. And, I think Ed Slater, he did a speech up in the director's suite before the game, and it was just absolutely magnificent. And it just gives you that desire and inspiration to keep banging that drum and living a life out in the legacy of Doddy, Rob, and Ed, who's obviously still fighting and with us and making a huge difference. And the way that the two games, the camaraderie is shone through, both in the training session on the Saturday and the game on the Sunday, just magnificent. It was an honour to be a part of it.
That's awesome. And to anyone that's listening, did you get the win?
We did.
Yes.
So I had a jaw operation almost exactly 12 months ago, and I've got two plates in it. I had to have it cut and moved. So I didn't actually play. I sort of helped manage the team and put a team together and just did some warm ups and shifted, threw a few balls around. But we wanted to get a win as well. We wanted to perform. We wanted to have a bit of a spectacle, and it was just great again to see so many players come in to support Rob and playing such a wonderful game.
Absolutely, it's incredible and testament to your efforts and your absolute career. So my final question for you is, what's next for Jamie Jones-Buchanan?
Well, I'm currently Director of Culture, Diversity and Inclusion at the Leeds Rhinos. So when I signed for Leeds in 1997, we had a men's team. But now we've got a men's team, women's team, wheelchair rugby league team, just won a grand final about 8 weeks ago.
Absolutely.
We've got a learning disability team, physical disability team, and we've got a netball team. So it is.
My cousin is actually in the women's academy.
Yes.
Her name's Tilly J. Brown.
Brilliant. Well, we just did our under 19s.
She's in the under 19s.
That was in here maybe last week.
Okay.
In this very room. So that was great. And to meet them and just think that we're creating opportunities for young women like me 27 years ago to fulfill their potential. And that's all. We're changing lives through the power of sport. So I'm there trying to tell the story internally, externally, inviting the community in and just supporting people like your cousin in fulfilling and realising their potential and hopefully fulfilling their dreams like I did.